Today, let's knit an owl hat. It's called I'm a Hoot Knit Hat by yarnspirations.com. Welcome back to another Yarnspirations tutorial. I'm your host, Kristen Mangus of GoodKnitKisses. Let's get started. In today's tutorial, you'll need a bulky number 5 weight yarn. We're using Bernat Softy Baby Chunky in color Cozy Gray for the main color, and color Cloud White for contrast A. You'll also need a couple yards each of worsted weight yarn in colors black and yellow. I'm using Bernat Super Value Black and Karen Simply Soft Gold. In today's pattern, we are working on the I'm a Hoot Knit Owl hat. Isn't this adorable? Oh my gosh. And we'll work on the main stitch pattern, including cast on, the ribbing, the stockinette, working the color stranding for these eyes, and we'll continue up, finish it off, seam it up. We'll add in embroidery for these little eye slits or eyebrows, and we'll add in the nose with duplicate stitch. We'll also be making these little tassel ears, so you'll learn how to read a chart as well. This is an intermediate pattern, but don't be scared. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know. So if you've been looking to jump into an intermediate pattern and learn the color stranding and some of these extra techniques, this is a great pattern to jump into from the beginner and easy patterns. Let's go over the supplies that you're going to need. It's Bernat Softy Baby Chunky in main color Cozy Gray, 1 ball, and you can do that for either size 6 to 12 months or 18 to 24 months. And the contrast A for the big eyeballs is Fluffy Cloud White. You'll also need a couple yards each of yellow and black worsted weight yarn, and that's to make this cute little nose and the little eye slits. You're going to be working on a US 10.5 or 6.5 millimeter knitting needle. You can work with a circular or straight, it doesn't matter. We're working in a flat panel. And if you are working in a knitting loom, I will give instructions on a little bit of that, but this main pattern is going to be showing in the video how to make it on needles. If you have a knitting loom, you're going to want a regular or large gauge loom so that you can obtain the gauge that's written on there. I recommend either a 31 peg Knifty Knitter loom or the 48 peg Knifty Knitter loom or something along those sizes. This is a 5/8 inch, or you can use 11/16. All right, let's move on. The abbreviations are some of the basic things that you should already know. You need to know how to cast on, knit, and purl, and you need to know what your right side is and what your wrong side of your fabric is. It fits baby sizes 6 to 12 months and 18 to 24 months. When the pattern is in the parentheses here or a different color, you're going to use the color of the size that you want. If it's written in black with no parentheses, then you'll just follow that number. This is the gauge, 13 stitches and 17 rows in a 4-inch stockinette stitch. That's all knit stitches on the front. All right, and I've covered this about the parentheses. And there's a note on here about when you work from the chart, you want to wind small balls of color to be used, and that's referring to the white that's for the big eyes. And I'll show you how to make a little handy butterfly bobbin so that you can have that in the back and things won't get all moved around and tangled. So it's really easy. And that way you can start colors at the appropriate points. And then to change colors, it goes over twisting them, and we will cover that in the video. Now, I want to talk just for a moment about this pattern before we dive in. If you're working on needles, you switch back and forth between the right side row and then the wrong side row. If you happen to be working on a knitting loom, all of your even rows are all wrong side rows on a needle chart and on a needle written pattern. You won't need to do that. You'll flip knits for purls and purls for knit. So in this case, you will be working a second row just like the first row. Okay, so if you'll make that note, and I'll put notes down in the description link below for the video. And then the third row and the fourth row will be the same for a loom pattern. So you'll knit 2 rows in a row. No purling on that back. And then everything else is stockinette stitch, and we start working with color stranding right here. Okay, and then you'll be referring to the chart. So if you are working on a loom, just jump to the part in the video where we talk about the chart, and then you can see how it works up on the needles. Now, I'm going to skip over to this next page. And you're going to continue in the stockinette after we work on this chart here. and then you cast off, and then we work on the embroidery. So we do a duplicate stitch, and that's to make the nose, and we'll be doing the chain stitch, and that's to make those little eye slits that go right along here, and I'll show you exactly where that falls in the chart. And then we'll also be making tassels and make this really cute little ears and stuff. So without further ado, let's get started right in on this pattern. Be sure and click on the link in the description below to download your pattern and get your tools today, and all your yarn, of course. See you soon. Okay, so we're going to start in our pattern for casting on. We're going to cast on in the main color 27 stitches for the small size and 29 stitches for the larger size. The larger size is 18 to 24 months. Now I'm going to do the long tail cast on. You can use whatever one you're most comfortable with. Pull out about a yard, a little less than a yard, and you can start casting this on. If I go a little fast, I've got videos to cover going slower if you need. I like to put this on, especially with hats and baby things. I don't like to put a slip knot on it, so you don't have to. So you just put it right down here. I put the tail part towards me and the ball part coming from the back. I'm going to grab it with my hand and then split it with my finger and my thumb, and then pull back, and I'm going to scoop up what's in my thumb, go down where the finger is, and then down back through the thumb again, let it pop off my thumb, and kind of pull on that yarn a little bit and to tighten that up a little, and do it again. We don't want it too tight or too loose, just right. So we're going to pull back, we're going to scoop up with the thumb, down where the finger is, down where the thumb is, and let that drop off. So you're going to continue scooping up, going down, down, and pulling that through. I'm going to cast on 27 stitches for the small, 29 for the larger one. I'll see you in just a moment. Pause your video and meet me back up when you have that amount. We're going to start on row 1, right side. We're going to knit 1 and purl 1 across, and on the last stitch we're going to knit 1. This is going to be a 1x1 ribbing. So let's do that now. If you are diving in for the first time, I'm going to take the first couple of stitches slower, and pause your video if you already know how to do this, and I'll meet you back up on row 2. We're going to take our yarn, wrap around the needle. I'm sorry, let me back up. Let's go into the first stitch this direction. So between the first and second stitch in this loop here, wrap around with our working yarn that's coming from the ball, pull that on through, making a loop on that right needle and letting the one on the left drop off. Then we need to shift and our yarn to the front here, go between those two needles, and now we're going to go in towards the front of this stitch here, the first stitch here. We're going to wrap around, and we're going to be pushing that new loop through the back part. Okay, so that is a purl stitch. So we've knit 1 and purled 1. Let's go back and do that again one more time. Yarn to the back. Okay, so you have to go in between here. Otherwise, you'll be increasing a stitch if you don't do that. We're going to knit 1 and bring it back to the front. And we're going to purl this stitch. Okay, I do have slower videos if you need that. Make sure you're alternating back and forth from knit 1, purl 1, and I'll join you back for the next row. Okay, I'm on the last stitch. This is a knit 1 stitch, just to remind you. And before you flip over, let's go ahead and mark that this is a right side row so you can keep up with it. So I just take a stitch marker, and I'm going to go along kind of where the third stitch or so is, and just put that right on the front there. Okay, and then that way, whenever I flip over to this side, I know I'm on the right side and I can count that. All right, so let's flip on over and go to row 2. So row 2 is just the opposite because we are on the wrong side. We want to make these stitches appear correct on the other side. So we're going to purl 1, knit 1, and then the last stitch is going to be purled 1. So let's do that now. I'm just going to start off here. That's easy enough because we don't have to put the yarn to the front. It's already there as long as you approach it this way. Go ahead and purl that. And then knit the next stitch. And continue along, purling 1, knitting 1. And purl your last stitch. This is going to make a nice stretchy edge here. Okay, pause your video and I'll meet you back up for the next part. Okay, so you're going to purl this last stitch. Okay, and now we're going to repeat those last 2 rows one more time each. So knit a row for 1 and 2, and I'll meet you back up. Okay, your hat should look like this. It's got a nice and stretchy 1 by 1 edging here. And now we're just going to knit a row and start our stockinette main field. This hat is just a field of stockinette, and then we'll be working in the color stranding to make those big, giant, fun owl eyes. So continue knitting across. I'll meet you back up for the next row. Okay, this is a critical part for all the stockinette. Now we know that row 4 is to purl. So all your wrong sides on this entire project now, from now on, until we get to the ending section of ribbing, will be purl. Okay, so all even rows are purl. All right, join me back when you are finished with this row. See you soon. Okay, we're ready to move on with starting reading from the chart. We are on the 5th row. It's not the counted 5th row, this is just the 5th row of the pattern, because remember you had 2 extra rows in here. Okay, so with the main color, that's the MC, we're going to knit 3, or you'll knit 4 for the next size up. So that's how to read that if you're not familiar with reading for another size in a chart. And then we're going to knit first row of chart, reading rows from right to left, and we'll go over that. And then with main color, we knit 3. Now the reason why it says with main color and then you knit according to the chart is because on the chart it shows you where to use A, or contrast A, which is the white color. So for me, it's a gray for main color and it's a white for color A. So let's go ahead and kind of go through here. I'm not going to be looking at this part. I'm going to refer you to the chart here in a second, but know that the 5th row is going to begin and end with either knit 3 or knit 4, depending upon your size. Let's start by knitting the 3 that we need, and then we're going to get the color ready. So knit 1, 2, and 3, and then I want to show you how to make a butterfly bobbin, and it's making it to where you have a nice little small thing that you can manage when you don't have very much color to work with, that we don't have a huge ball to work with. So I'm taking the part that's coming from the ball and I'm going to put it in my hand like this and have a nice little strand here, and I'm going to wrap around my thumb and then go around and wrap around my pinky and go back and forth and make this little figure 8 around my hands. And then when I get it nice and full, kind of 3/4 of the way up here, I'm going to finish this off and show you how to make this butterfly bobbin. So continue winding until it's nice and full, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I've got that nice and full, and I've got about a foot left here. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this around and go around all the yarn, including that little tail, and pull that through. And I'm going to wrap it around a couple of times. And in fact, once I can just pull that right off. Now, if your dexterity, if you can't do that with your hands, just pull from the ball, that's fine. But these nice little small balls or bobbins are really great to do. Now, the benefit of it is now that I've gone around and then I've tucked this tail in here, I can take my other tail, the long one that I started with, and this will easily pull from all these strands and it won't have a knot. So this can kind of hang back at the back of your work and you can move it around for color stranding. So this is going to be off to the side. Okay, so now that we've got our bobbin ready, I can start adding in color. Okay, so I want to, this first stitch is going to be a little loose, and then I'll start twisting them around whenever we change back and forth. So let me pick up my chart and show you. Go to the second page of your pattern, and we're going to move into this chart here. Now it says start here. You're going to start at the bottom right where 1 is, and that is your first row of the chart. Now the row of the chart starts with after the knit 3 or the 4. So it actually has the stitches that we did right here. Okay, so when you look at this chart, it's going to start with the 3, and then you work these next 4 here in the gray, and then you're going to knit the white ones here. Okay, and then you're going to knit gray and then white. Ignore these right here because these little X's are actually talking about the duplicate stitch, which we will work on later, and that's going to make the nose of your owl. Now down on this other side down here, it will finish off with 3 extra here. So ignore this part here and this part here as far as doing the eyes, but remember you'll need to have this. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean here. So it showed me that I already started with 3, and then I'm working with the chart. So the chart starts with 4 stitches in gray. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now when you're first starting, if that's going to be harder for you to kind of see where that is, you can take a stitch marker and just go right around where that is. Okay. And let that tell you that's where your chart starts. And if that makes it easier on you, then go right ahead and make that. Okay, so now we want to start our color. Hold this yarn in the back, and we're just going to go through this stitch here and wrap around with our new yarn. Okay, so I'm going to knit 1. Now according to the chart here, I'm actually going to need 3. So I did the 4 here, and then I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3 and white, and then I'm going to continue on with gray. So let's do those 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then I need the gray to appear. So I'm going to grab the gray from underneath, okay, and go into that stitch here. I'm going to knit 1. Okay, and let me count how many there are. Oops, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've already knit 7. So I'm going to say 2, 3. Okay, now I'm about halfway. I'm going to do something a little bit different here. I'm going to go ahead and twist my white around, and I'm going to put it on top here for a second. And then I'm going to knit some more. This is 4. And then I'm going to go on top again. And it's going to lock that stitch in there. And I'm going to say 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, okay, in that color. Now that I'm back to my white again, what I've done is I've actually locked this longer color float back here by spinning it around right in the middle of that, and I've locked it in so I have shorter floats in the back. These long strands where you're carrying your yarn in the back are called floats, and I just was showing you a trick how to keep the floats a little shorter. Okay, so now what I want is I'm going to grab the white yarn from underneath again, and I'm going to knit my next stitches, and I'll tell you it's 3 because we're going to make an eyeball just as we did over here. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. Okay, and now we want to knit to the end. Okay, so I'm going to grab my my main color, which is the gray, and I'm going to knit to the end of the row. Okay, once I've made my second eye, we know that we can just knit to the end of the row in the main color. And that white is just going to hang out there until it's ready for the next color. Okay, or the next row. All right, we're going to turn our work, and now you can see those strands, those color strands that we did. Okay. All right, so now we want to purl here. So we're going to go up and under here, and I'm going to move my bobbin over here. I'm going to purl 1, 2, 3. Okay, now this is that beginning and ending part. Remember, on the right side you started with a 3 and you end with a 3. It's the same thing here. Now I'm going to go back over to my chart. Okay, so I have 3 stitches on this side. Okay, so I finished row 1, now I'm on row 2. I did 3 already, and so now I need 2 more of the gray, and then I'm going to work white. So let's do 2 gray, and these are going to show up knit on the other side, so we need a purl here. So 1, 2. Okay, so now we need white, and I'm going to grab this white here. And I want to make sure that this yarn is twisted and tied in. So I'm going to go ahead and twist this around. Okay. All right, so I've got my yarn twisted in, and now I'm going to go ahead and purl that. And before I move on, I'm going to go ahead and kind of give this a little bit of a tug to make sure it's nice and snug in there, and then I don't have any holes in my work. Okay, so now I'm going to continue with my white, and let me go ahead and check my pattern and see how many I need. So we have 1, 2 that I've already done, and then 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got 3, 4. Okay, and if I want to make that float a little bit shorter here, I can go ahead and do that little twist around and pull my yarn to the front here and hold it to where that next stitch is going to be, and then get my yarn back around again. Okay, you don't have to lock these in this way. I'm doing this so you don't have long color floats. Okay, so now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and finish knitting that stitch. I'm going to pull that float through. Okay, and I got one more. All right, so before I move on with my next color, I'm going to make sure that my floats aren't too tight. See, make sure they're nice and loose here. They're not going to be, I don't want them to be like floating really bad. But I've got six stitches here now. So now I want to move on the next part. So we've done this row here. We're up to this point. We want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, ignore the little X's. So 5 gray. All right. So I'm going to grab from underneath the gray. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then I'm going to grab my white here, and I'm just going to spin this around, so because I want to grab it from underneath. Okay. All right, now here we go. I'm going to knit that. All right, purl that. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're doing the same as we did down here. See, I don't even check my pattern when I'm doing the second part of the eye. 5. I said 6 here. Yeah, 6 here. And 6. And if you notice this right here, I accidentally pulled it. I meant to show you, but this is, if you notice it gets tighter here, it's because this was that original strand that we started with. So you can just tug on that to make it snugged up, and there's not a gap. So we need one more stitch. I'm at the end here, and what I want to do is make sure that I'm gonna lock this in and go ahead and wrap this yarn around to twist it. And grab my gray from underneath and purl. And then what I do is I mess with that little color strand there to make sure that it's all locked in. It's not going anywhere. Okay. And go ahead and purl to the end. And then slip that stitch over, and these are those last 3 end stitches. Okay. Let's go to the next row. So now we're on row 3 and we're going to knit 1, but don't forget about our 3. So you're technically going to knit 4 in the gray, and then these are going to be white, and then we do 3 gray. So let's count how many white so we're ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to knit 4 in the gray. Knit 1, 2, 3, slip my marker, and then we're knitting that 1 from the chart there. Okay, now again, if you've got the other size, you're going to have 4 on the other side of that marker, and then this is going to be white. So we're going to put this one down, and we're going to pick up our white, and it's already been locked in, so I don't have to do any twisting now on this one. So we're just going to knit that stitch. 1, 2, 8. Okay, now if you notice, I did not try and tie it in the back. I did not try and lock it in at all. And you can choose to do either one. You can choose to have the longer floats, which I'll show you what it looks like, or you can try and lock them in. So if that beginning part was a little too complicated, then just don't worry about it, and you can try locking them in later on. But twisting them whenever you change to the next color to avoid gaps is the best thing. So now I'm going to grab my yarn from underneath, okay, and you'll see this float here. So this is going to float along the back, eight of these stitches. Okay, so let's knit here. So this was knit 3, 1, 2, 3 in that gray color, or main color. And now we want to grab our white, so we grab from underneath here and knit that one. And remember, our count was 8, so we've got 1, 2, 8. Now remember, if you are on a desktop or laptop, you can actually hit that slow down button, or you can speed up. So if I'm going too fast or too slow, be sure and get on a desktop or laptop so you can speed that up or slow it down. Pause your video as you need to catch back up to it, whatever you need to do. If this is your first time watching the video, be sure and watch the video through so you can see all the techniques, and then join me back when you're ready to knit it with me. Okay, so I'm going to drop that yarn and pick up from the bottom my gray, because I'm done with that part of the eye. And then we're just going to knit to the end, which is 4 again. So if your stitch count is off and it's not mirrored on the other side, you'll know that you may have gotten an extra stitch in there somewhere, or one less. All right, so go on the wrong side here. Okay, and if your yarn gets a little bit twisted up with this bobbin, all you gotta do is move it around, and you should be good to go. Coming back over to the written part, we've gone to the 5th row and we worked with the main color, making that first row, and then we did the 6th row coming back where we're purling. Then we worked a 7th row where we worked back, and that's there. Okay, so we just did all of that, and we're at the end of the 3rd row, and now we're going to work back this direction, and you're going to see all of these are white, so you're going to have 3 over here, and then you have 1 smack dab in the middle, which is gray, and then we're going to finish out in the white and then have the 3 at the end. And that's going to be the same way, so you're going to have all these white for like 4 rows in a row. So from row 4 all the way to 7 are going to look the same on the front of your work, and then you'll finish it out. So when the pattern reads down here, when the pattern reads continue working chart to end of chart, that's what that's referring to. Chart is now in position. So it just means that you now kind of should know where it is. Let's just go ahead and do all this together, so we'll work through it. Now we're going to go ahead and purl the 3, 1, 2, 3, okay, and then we want to pick up the white. Okay, so I want to twist that color in. All right, and I'm going to purl. I like to get that stitch in and then fix my tension. Okay, and then continue all the way down. Okay, and so now you have this one one gray here. So we're going to grab that gray. Grab that gray. And you can see how that float is really long. So what you want to avoid here is when you're grabbing something, especially that long, make sure that you have enough flexibility in your knitting to where it's not pulling it in. So if you try and make these floats shorter, it's going to make your patterning on the front side smaller, and therefore making your hat smaller, and then these little things will be puckering out inside the hat, and we don't want that to happen. So you can see how when I lock them in here, you're not getting all these loose strands. Okay, so I've locked that in. Now let's flip over and do the white here again. Okay. 2, 3, 10. Okay, and let that drop down, and you just grab the gray from underneath. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lock that in because I don't want to have a hole in my work. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap my bobbin around. I'm going to pull that float on over, so allow myself some room, and kind of cinch that up. All right, and then now here we go. And that's locked in. And I'm just knitting to the end. Now I've kind of dropped off my marker here because I think it's pretty evident where this is going to be. So now I'm just knitting these 3 at the beginning part, and my eyeball is going to go for a few rows here. Okay, so on the chart I am on number 5, on row 5. So that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I've got white. 1, 2, 3. So you should be able to get from rows 5 to row 7 done. And so meet me back at the end of row 7. Pause your video and I'll see you in a moment. All right, so your pattern should look about like this, and you've done most of the eye section, and we've completely finished up to number 7, row number 7. So you're going to start back on 8 going this direction, and you're going to work your 3. Now you're going to add in back the 1. You're just doing the reverse of what you did on the other side, just like rows 3 to 1. So you're going to be doing that from rows 8 to 10. So go ahead and do those in reverse now. And I'm going to turn this on the back and show you how it's working up on mine so you can kind of compare with yours. This is what mine looks like right now. And you can see these long floats that are holding the stitch in, and you can see where I had done the ones where I locked them in earlier on, and it keeps it a little looser, and you have a tendency to kind of pull these maybe a little too tight, and so your knitting is only as stretchy as you've allowed it. So if you got a little too tight and you find that the eyes are maybe too tight here, like this one, I might have gotten a little bit too tight here, and I don't really have any way to make it smaller other than to go back or mess with my tension in an area to get that nice and looser. So be sure and play with that. I'm going to show you one that has gotten further along. In fact, I've got a little bit of the eyebrow on there, so oops, you get to see that. So let's turn it over and look at that. So that's what mine looks like on the back with these long floats, and of course you can lock them in as I was trying to show you earlier as well, but it'll look like this when you're done with that section. So after you have completed this row here, you are going to continue in stockinette. Okay, So let's go here. So once you've completed row 10, you're going to come over here and continue in the stockinette stitch until your work from the very beginning measures approximately 11 inches or 12 for the larger size and ending on a purl row. And then I'll meet you back up and we'll talk about where to go from there. Okay? All right, see you soon. Okay, so we've continued in our stockinette until we got 11 inches and you're ending on a purl row. So you'll make sure that your yarn is coming from this left side. When you're looking at the back, you've just completed a purl row. That means that you've completed on the wrong side, ending on a purl row. And then you're going to measure from here until here until you get the correct length. And then we're going to work on where it says repeat from this double asterisk to the double asterisk. It jumps back to here on the first page where the double asterisk is for first row right side, and then we make our 1 by 1 ribbing, and we're going to work 4 rows of that ribbing. Okay, so go ahead and do that and I'll meet you back for casting off. So now our pattern says it's calling for cast off in ribbing. So the way we're going to do that is we follow our rib pattern. So the next stitch on this right side would be a knit. So we're going to knit that stitch. The next stitch would be a purl. So we're going to purl that stitch. And then when we have 2 stitches on here, we're going to take the first stitch and move it up and over the tip of our needle and cast that off, so over that second stitch. Now we need a second stitch put on, and the next one is a knit stitch because it's following this knit column. So we're going to knit that stitch. So we're going to knit the knits and purl the purls and then lift the back loop over the top to work that over, and it's going to bind off with this nice chain on the top in pattern. So we're going to purl this purl here and lift that loop on over, and if you see, I'm moving my yarn to the back to help myself work that stitch and move my yarn out of the way. So this next one is a knit, and work that, lift that loop back up and over, and then purl. So we're going to continue across. I'll meet you back up when you have your last stitch. Okay, I've got 1 stitch left and it's my knit stitch, so we'll just do that as we have been. Lift that bottom loop over the top, and then we're going to pull out that last stitch and snip our yarn. Okay, and sometimes I just happen to have an extra long little snag here. I'm just going to pull on this yarn here and work that stitch through a little bit and loosen up my tension on those other stitches, and that actually will help this little loose stitch. So if you ever have a little bit of a loose stitch there, you can pull it on the stitches down below because those are all part of that same little column, and that will fix that tension for you. Okay, so let's move on to the rest of this pattern. Okay, so we've cast off in the ribbing, and it says work duplicate stitch with yellow yarn as indicated on the chart and embroider the eyes with black yarn as illustrated using chain stitch. Then we're going to fold in half and sew the side seam. So we're going to do that here in the next segment. Then we're also going to move forward and work on tassels. So we'll make all this together here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is the duplicate stitch, and I will show you exactly where to put it in. You're going to look over at this chart to help you as well. And we're going to start by making this first little part of the nose and then come up and work the top part. Okay, so grab your yarn, and you're going to want to grab a couple of yards of this here. I actually grabbed 3 yards and this particular one, and I'm doubling it over. So I'm going to use 2 strands at the same time, and because I'm doing that, I'm going to take my needle and go ahead and put this through and put it at the halfway point. Okay, and then that way when I use my yarn, this second strand will always be with it, and it won't get any tangled or anything. All right, so pause your video, and when you're ready, let's move on for this section. All right, let's work a duplicate stitch. So on your chart here, we're going to work these boxes that are X'd And we've got a knitting pattern with our eyes showing here. You can see where there's the single color here, and it might be easier to spot them this way. So I've got a single color here between the whites, and below that I've got 3 colors of gray. So look here, we've got a single color and 3 colors of gray. The top of the nose is right underneath those stitches, and so you're just going to follow that down until you get to the point here for this stitch. We're going to be going, if you follow this corner and this corner down to the mid part, there's a little part here. This is where the V stitch is. So the knit stitch has a V that goes like this, okay? And so we're going to go to this point here, this little V stitch here. That's your knit stitch. Then we have the 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we have 1 row below that. That's the 3. And then we're going to go to this stitch here, okay? So these are the 2 rows that don't get done. This is the top part of the nose. I'm going to go to this part. I'm going to go up through here. That's that midpoint where that V is, okay? So I'm going to pull that on through and leave a nice little tail, okay? And now I want it to cover this part of the V. You can go this way or you can go this way. I'm just going to go to the right. And I want to go through, so I want to go to this side, so I'm going to go through this direction of the V's above it. Now, if I wanted to cover this side of the V, then I would enter my needle through the other way. So I'm going to go this way, pull it through, and now I've just covered up that V. Now I'm going to go down through that V and cover up the other leg of that V stitch. It's a knit stitch, okay? And because I have 2 strands, I like to kind of mess with it, make sure that it looks nice and neat before I move on to the next stitch. Okay, so now I need to come up through where my next one is. I'm just going to go to the right. So I'm going to find the bottom of that V here. Do you see that? So it's 1 row up from where I was and 1 stitch over. And then we're going to go through here, but instead of going through the back, you're going to pick up those 2 stitches for the one above it. Okay, pull that on through, okay, and then go down where you came out earlier and pull that on through. All right, so that looks how I want it, those 2 little V's. And now we're going to come up through this part here. So go over and up, pull it on through, and go pull up those V's and go through there. All right, and we're going to go down, so we're going to go down through the V. All right, almost done. Now we want to get this one here, so we're going to go over. All right, and go ahead and cover this leg. So we're going to go to the right through these, above it, and then go down. And you just made a super cute nose. How good are you? Isn't that cute? Okay, so we're just going to go flip it over onto the back, and you can see all my floats from before. I'm going to make sure I've got this one not trapped in there. And I can just weave in my tail. So I'm going to go through one of these little floats here and pull it up, make a loop, and then go through my loop. And then that's how I can cinch that up and make a little knot. And I like to go through another one for good measure. And go ahead and make a little knot there. Okay, and then I can get my scissors here and tie a knot here. Okay, and actually I don't even need it that long. I don't want to do that. Okay, let's just go ahead and cut that off, and then we'll take the next one. This was their original tail, and go ahead and weave this part in as well. Now you want to be careful that you're not weaving in as you normally would. You're not going to go back up through the front part here. And so I'm just going through where I just use the same yarn and making a knot. So I go through a stitch and go through a little loop that I just created and pull a nice little knot. Okay. All right, so make sure my strands look really good. That looks really great. Now I'm going to cut that, and we're done with the nose, and that is the duplicate stitch. All right, let's move on to embroidery. This is a chain stitch here, and it's making this eyebrow, or like a little cute little closed eye. So let's go on my paper chart that I've marked up for you. So this is the printed chart that I did, and I wanted you to see this is where the eye falls. Now to start it, in order to make it look like it's a little squinty at the beginning of the eye, I've started my chain stitch from where the nose area would be, starting here and going over. So that would be on the left side. On the right side, I'm going to start here and work to the right. So it's going to start here at an angle and go all the way around here. So I'm going to go diagonally up through here, and then I'm going to go over two, and then down to here, and we'll go at diagonal. So I'm going to show you how to do that here. I just want to explain what I'm doing and why I'm going in the direction I'm going. Okay, you're going to need about 2 yards for your embroidery. I used about 1.5 yards on each eye just so I have enough tail on the end just in case. So you're going to want to thread your needle here. And you're just using a wide-eyed tapestry needle or whatever is going to fit yours. You can use a blunt tapestry needle if you have one that's a bent end on it. Those work really great as well. Okay, I'm going to start my embroidery stitch. I know about where it's going to go, so I'm going to show you what that looks like on here. I'm going to go over one column and down right here. I'm going to come up through the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to go here and pull through until I get a tail that I want. And I'm going to cross over this stitch here to the other side. I'm going to make it go up diagonal, and that's where I want it to come up through. Okay, so I'm not actually going to go down through there. I'm actually going to go down through where I just came out of, and I'm going to go up through the area I was just pointing at. Okay, and then before I pull through, I'm going to take my yarn that's coming out of this stitch and wrap around the needle. Okay, and this is going to make our little circle embroidery. I'm going to pull it all the way through. Okay, and then you can see that it made this little chain stitch on the top of your knitting. Okay, now that we have that started, and you do have your tail in the back, then you continue going down through the stitch that you last came out of. Okay, down through that little hole. And I'm going to pull this a little tighter to match the other side. I'm going to go down through here. I'm going to go up through the next section that I want to be coming out of. So I'm going to come out here. And before I move on, I'm going to take that strand that's coming from the last embroidered part, go around that needle, pull on through. Okay, so I'm going to go down through where I just came out of and up where I want to be going. And before I pull on through, I'm going to grab the yarn that's coming from the last stitch, wrap around that needle, pull through my slack, and we made our next stitch. And now I'm just going to go straight over across according to my pattern. So I go through that stitch I just came out of, and I'm going to go straight across instead of a diagonal, wrap around that yarn, pull through. There we go. And do it again. I'm going to side again. And wrap around. Okay, and then now I'm going to diagonal down so I can go through this one and go down. I'm going to wrap around this one. Oops. Make sure I'm really wrapping around. Okay, there we go, and go down and around this one, down here, And make sure I'm wrapping around. On through. Okay, I've got one more stitch to go. Go down through this one that I just did. And down here. Make sure I've got my yarn that's coming from that stitch and pull it on through. And there we go. Make sure I don't pull it too tight and I get that looking just right. Okay, so now I've got my little face. It looks so cute. And I'm going to go lock this little guy in. Okay, so it's a little loop here. So I'm just going to go down through that last stitch one more time to the back. And then that will lock that loop in on the front side. And now we want to flip over to the back. And then I just grab some yarn here. I'm going to grab the back of this stitch here. And pull through until I still have a little bitty loop. And then go through that loop. And to tie a knot. And you can do another one if you wish. Pull it on through, make a loop, and go through that loop one more time. And everything is good to go, and you want to go ahead and weave in all these other loose tails first before we move on. So go ahead and do that. I'll meet you back up when you've woven in all your loose tails on your ends here. See you in a moment. Okay, we're going to take our hat and fold it in half, and we'll be stitching along the two sides here. Okay, so we're going to go up through the bottom of this ribbing section here, and we want to connect it over to the other side. So leave a tail that you can weave in and connect it right over to the other side. And you can weave in this tail later and connect it to the other side. I think it's just easier just to leave it and make adjustments as you need. So we're going to ignore this little selvage area here and just jump right over to these little spots, these little bars in between. I'm going to pick up one of these bars and then go across zigzag to the other side and pick up one of these bars. This is in the purl areas, and zigzag across and go to the next side, and then go to the other side, and we're just moving back and forth, zigzag across. And when I've gone up about 4 rows, I can kind of pull on this and see that I have got it nice and lined up, and it's kind of imitating where I would have a knit column, a purled column in between here. And then this beginning part, I can just sew this in to match it up. So now I want to make this stockinette side, and I want to make these line up as well. So I'm going to go through here, and this is the side of my knit stitches, okay? And I'm going to be picking up in between these stitches here, okay? So I'm going to pick up this. It's actually, this is my last one. This is a purl bump on this side. Last purl bump. Okay, I'm going to zigzag over to the other side and go in between these stitches here, okay? This little knit column. Pick up that bar in between, and go over here and pick up this bar in between. And come back over, and I can see where I just went across. We get the next bar and go back over and pick up the next one. And as you go back and forth, you'll be able to go up about an inch or so, and you can pull it and see it start to kind of shrink up together. And so it imitates that stitch going up. So just continue. You can pull back your work if you need to see where you came from last, and just keep getting in between those V stitches. Grab that little bar in between. You can feel it with your needle. If you've got a bent a needle, those pick up those little bars really easy. And so just continue until you get all the way up to the end, and then you'll tie that off and repeat it on the other side. I'll join you back up when you get there. See you soon. Okay, I've worked my way all the way up the side here. You can see how pretty that looks. It does have a seam inside, so it's going to make it show up square. So you can see that right here. And I've just got a little bitty hole up top, so I'm just going to go right through these last few bars. So just go right in here. Kind of hard to see here, so I'm kind of just feeling my needle around where I need to be. Okay, and then I'm just going to go down through this part here and onto the inside. Turn that on over, and then go ahead and go through one of these stitches, leaving a loop, and then pull through that loop to make a knot. And then we can just cut that off, and then repeat on the other side. Okay, and just repeat this on the other side, and join me back up, and we'll be making the tassels and placing them on the hat. All right, let's make a tassel. I'm going to take my white yarn. I'm going to go ahead and cut out a little piece that I'm going to use to tie together. Now my instructions say a wind A, which is, this is my what's called a contrast A in this pattern. So around my 4 fingers approximately 40 times. So go ahead and wrap your yarn around your 4 fingers 40 times, and meet me back up when you've got that number. Okay, I've got my yarn wrapped around 40 times. I'm going to go ahead and cut that yarn. And now I can take my cut yarn that I already had set out previously and feed it through here. And we want to take that and tie a knot securely. Okay, at one end. So we'll take this, now that we've got that all around here, and we'll tie it securely. So I'm going to go all the way that way, and then I'm going to go around the other direction and make a square knot, so that's nice and secure. It's not going anywhere. Okay, and then we're going to wrap the strand of A around the tassel a 1/2 inch down. So we're going to pull this down like this. Okay, and so this is the part that's going to be used to tie on here. And then now I need a strand that's going to go around here at the top. Okay, so I can cut another strand here, and I'm going to go around it like this and do the same thing that I did before. So I'm going to tie a knot, and then tie another one again, all the way through, and make my knot. And then now I'm just going to cut these extra part and then leave this long here. So I've already got that ready, and then we just cut this all the way across. And once I cut it across, it's going to look like this. So you cut that across, and then you trim off the rest, and you'll take this and tie this on. All right, let's go tie this on now. I've got my hat here with these corners, and what I want to do is get these two inside securely, and I'm going to let it go around one of these little columns here. So I've got 2 points coming in, and then I'll be able to tie a knot. So I'm actually going to go in with one strand here at this point, and go inside and feed it through. And then I'm going to take my next one and go through the other side at that tip and feed it on through. Okay, so now they're coming out with a column of knits in between, and I can tie this on without making a knot just yet and see if I like it, if it's in the right place. And I do like it. And before I totally securely tie it in, I'm going to go ahead and put the next one in, and then we'll just tie a knot in the end. Okay, go ahead, repeat on the other side, and then we'll finish this up together. And look at my work and see if I've got them in the place that I want them, and they look like they are identical. They're mirror images of each other. So I'm going to flip this inside out and then finish tying my knot securely. And there we have it, a cute owl hat. Ah, I'm a hoot. Isn't that adorable? Ah. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed making your I'm a hoot knit hat today. I actually know who I'm going to give this to. They're in the middle of adopting a baby, so I'm excited. All right, so I'm so thankful to have you today. On behalf of Yarnspirations and Good Knit Kisses, I'm Kristen, wishing you happy knitting. Bye-bye.